the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site. With me is Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, the SB Nation Arizona Cardinals site, and one of the hosts of the original Draft Breakdown podcast, a podcast that you should still listen to even though we are post-draft. For a number of reasons, that they'll talk about the draft classes that just finished. They'll look ahead to the next college season. So it's never a bad time to start listening to that show. But this show, Seth, this is going to give us a chance to make us look foolish again, just like when we do our mock drafts. We're doing schedule predictions, right? Because schedule release, I mean, we're recording on a Tuesday night, so when this drops, we'll be a day away from the actual schedule release. And, you know, people get really excited about it. I don't know why we get excited about it. We already know who the Cardinals are playing and where they're playing. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I think people like to start getting their gambling predictions ready, right? So they can.
Well, and I also think it's also it every bit as much as the gambling as it is travel plans.
That too, yeah. So you can start making plans and stuff. And so, you know, Cardinals fans are already complaining because they are, you know, on the road for 9 games this season, and last season they only had 8 true home games. And I think you and I talked about this last year, but I think it's important to remember part of their agreement and what helps them get Super Bowl hosting privileges is agreeing to host those out of the country games as a home game. That's one of the things that the NFL, I don't want to say requires, but it
is required. So
okay,
if they get a Super Bowl, they have to give up a home game. They have to host an international game.
Yeah. So while it usually does not affect us as Cardinals fans or media, it is something that's important, obviously, to the ownership group, the team, obviously the economy in Arizona in general it's all good for that. So yes, we understand that it sucks for those paying season ticket holders who have to pay up for a bunch of games every season, and then they've basically lost their extra home game last year. Sorry, but at the same time, you know, I have a friend who I coach his son actually, and they got lucky and were drawn as season ticket holders out of the lottery to buy Super Bowl tickets. So I mean,
that's fun.
It's just one of those things that it balances out, but it's also something that I guess should probably. And this year it doesn't matter, you know, they're on the road for 9, but I guess we should always acknowledge or remind fans about that. Yes, the Cardinals, because they're a host city on the usual rotation, they get it about 4 or 5 seasons. They end up losing an extra game every couple of seasons when they should have 9, and it makes it even worse that this is year 3 of the 9-game home schedule or potential 9-game home schedule, and fans still haven't gotten 9 home games yet. So
that's true. We haven't yet.
So you know, I get it. It sucks, but it is part of the overall, you know, process that the NFL requires for them to be a host city.
Yep. So in this episode 422, we're trying to make this make this a marathon episode. We basically got 4 parts. We're gonna run through some of the schedule. If you haven't seen it yet, there are a few new wrinkles to scheduling this year. We will talk about potential primetime games, how many things we actually think will happen when the schedule comes out on Thursday. We will, you know, if we had to pick which games would the Cardinals play before Kyler's return. And then we're going to do something stupid and just try to put together a schedule. You know, what's it going to look like weeks 1 through 18? I know we'll sound ridiculous, but maybe we'll hit on one or two. I don't know. But next show, we will, assuming things go right, we will be able to react pretty much as soon as we get our content up for the sites. We'll record a reaction show to the schedule release, and we'll go from there. So, Seth, let's talk about first some new scheduling rules that could affect the Cardinals. One is that teams no longer are guaranteed primetime games. It was kind of the rule. Every team would get at least one primetime game. So
even if it was that terrible Thursday night game.
Yes. Teams can now play twice on Thursday night. I'm not sure that's a good thing.
It's not.
For TV purposes, where Cardinals games were almost always on Fox, because they're NFC games, because that's just typically how it goes. Fox airs mostly NFC games, and CBS aired mostly AFC games, but now that is changing. Basically, the networks will have to fight each other for all the games now. It'll be a battle. I don't know how that works. And a couple other wrinkles is that there will be, in addition to the Thanksgiving game, there'll be also a Black Friday game, which I'm not sure why they want to do that. Because they've been really good. The NFL has always been really good about not competing with college football.
I was going to say it's because the college football is typically during the day, so there's not a great prime time game, and so
I guess ASU U of A doesn't count as a great primetime game.
Well, national primetime game, and so one of the things the NFL does a really good job of is filling voids, and they like to do stuff like that. So, you know, it's
and the idea is get more eyeballs on television because that means more money.
Right. And so it's interesting because, you know, it used to be simple stuff, right? Like the Thanksgiving was a big day. It was 2 games, right?
Now it's 3.
Now it's 3.
Now it's 3 plus Black Friday.
Right. Now it's 3 plus Black Friday. But think about it. What was the big thing on Christmas always? Christmas was always the NBA. And now the NFL, it's like, it's around Sunday on Christmas. We're going to put 3 games on. Like I don't know what they'll do this year because it's Monday. If I know, I could be wrong, but you know, and so it's just one of those things where Christmas is on a Monday this year. So I doubt they'll have 3 games this year.
And no, I don't know.
I wouldn't put it past them either. You know, I wouldn't put it past them to, or maybe it's not 3, maybe it's 2, maybe it's a
afternoon and an evening, a Monday Night Football doubleheader, basically.
Right, and so that's what the NFL does: is they see these opportunities and they seize them. And like you said, the Black Friday is a perfect example of that because you know they realize that Thanksgiving night game is just a huge draw now. It's just massive.
And I know one of the things they want to do because of the Amazon now that Thursday night is exclusively on Amazon, is they really, really want that partnership to succeed. And so after,
well, I mean, based on what Amazon paid, I would hope that everybody wants that.
Right. Especially considering like the first and last year going on Amazon, the first few games were just absolute stinkers, just absolutely terrible matchups, and they want to
try to avoid that.
Yeah. And so they're going to try, and that's kind of why they changed the rules so you could have teams on Thursday Night Football twice, because then it allows for one expected good teams to be on more than once, and to take advantage of your national following team. So your Green Bay, your San Francisco, your all your NFC East teams, teams with strong national followings. Now, guess what that means for the Cardinals? The Cardinals are not expected to be good, and they're also do not have a large national following. So that means primetime games. They are as Peter King suggested, they are one of the teams that is most likely to not end up with a primetime game because there's a perfectly good reason for that. One, they're expected to be bad. Two, they don't have a national following, so it's not like people are clamoring for Cardinals games. And three, the player you would tune in to watch, Kyler Murray, might be out as much as the first half of this season. So, yeah, so it makes sense. And so those are the schedule wrinkles that we expect. And anything in that group, anything in that new stuff that seems kind of unreasonable. I don't like the second Thursday game. I wish they would work it so that it wasn't such Thursday. It's just bad for the body. It's bad for the football, bad for the bodies. Even if they do get that mini bye, it's at a cost, right? Because they can't practice. They just walk through, and then you have to hope that they're healthy.
Yeah, and it just makes it tough. Like you said, it's not a great product, and so that's it's unfortunate. But
yeah, well, that said, it makes sense. Like if you're trying to grow the product, and the players most certainly benefit because they get, what is it, like 53% of the pie. So if they're bringing in more television revenue as a result, so if we took away Thursday Night Football, that would drastically decrease the amount of revenue, which would then reduce the amount of salaries, which reduces the salary cap, which means there's less money for players. And so while there is a trade-off for sure. So while Thursday Night Football stinks on many levels, it is partially because of Thursday Night Football that we're able to see increased salaries in the NFL. So it's one of those things like in any job, you have it. So you get added this amount of money because you do this thing that you really hate, and you really hate it, but you live with it because you would rather the money than the other option.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, that's kind of just where it's at now, and it's unfortunate that, I mean, you and I have always expressed we're on the side of the players getting paid, get them their money. However, their desire, and we can agree or disagree with how much they get of the pie, that all of that good stuff. Their desire to get more of the pie in exchange for those short weeks is going to be something to keep an eye on, because to me, and I'm not sure how you feel, I feel like that NFLPA negotiating wasn't done in the best manner, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, they were looking at it more from how much extra we'll get to bring home now, or how much of the revenue we get, as opposed to, God, that's going to take a toll on our bodies way more. But they also fought for a lot less work.
The off-season work has changed.
Yeah, off-season work, and even training camp work.
Yeah, that's true. The padded practice is, but I don't know if that's good or bad. But and I think
nobody does.
But the one thing with the Thursday Night Football, I think the Players Association got to the point where like that was never going to come off the table, and so
no, but I think what happens is, and this is a long conversation, so we'll just get over it real quick. But I think what happens is when you open a door, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, oh, if you give us more revenue, we'll be open to more, Thursday night games. And then they come back and they say, hey, you can have 2 this season, not just the KC versus their first opponent on opening night.
Yeah, Thursday night game in week 1's fine.
Right. And then potentially your Thanksgiving game where we give you a week off afterwards, or a week off before. I can't remember what it is. But instead it goes, oh yeah, you play this Thursday, then you play that Sunday, and then you play that Monday, then you play that Sunday, and then this Thursday again. So
it would actually, if you could somehow work it so if a team had consecutive Thursday night games, that's not bad. I mean, it's really only one impact, a week off, and then
But the problem would be who would be the other team, right?
Yeah.
You got so do you give a team coming off their bye that Thursday game and then they get a mini bye? There's a lot that they have to figure out. But yeah, you're right. That's the best kind of way to go about it.
We can probably not expect that. So yeah, other than that, that's kind of what we've got moving forward. So coming up next on the Rise Up Sea Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. Let's discuss options for primetime games. How many will the Cardinals get? And what ones could they be? That's coming next on Rise Up Sea Red. We're back on the Rise Up Sea Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. The Cardinals will know their schedule on Thursday. With the new rule, or the possibility that no team is guaranteed primetime games, that leads many to wonder, will the Cardinals get any? As we sort of detailed in the last segment, there's a lot of reasons why the Cardinals would not be a hot ticket on primetime. One, they're not expected to be good. Two, they don't have a national following. Cardinals fans are growing.
You have to be intriguing to not be we call them blue bloods in college, right? So if you're not a blue blood like the Cowboys or the Giants or even the Jets, who can be habitually not good,
but teams will watch them.
Yeah, but their fans come out in droves consistently. Yeah. They don't care. Then you have to be exciting. And that's the thing. So, coming off of 2021, the Cardinals were exciting. So they ended up with 5 last year or whatever it was.
That we've seen that over the last few years, and you need star power. But here's the problem. The player, as we mentioned, that you would want to tune in to watch, Kyler Murray, he's hurt. And so, and we don't know the timetable. So we expect him to miss games to start the season, but with the early report in the offseason, like it might be midseason. We don't think it'll take that long. That really, it's that the NFL schedulers have got to be like, yeah, because nobody wants David Blau, because whether it's Colt McCoy, nobody wants Colt McCoy, David Blau, or even Clayton Tune starting on a Thursday night football game. Nobody wants that. We don't want that. No. One of the shows when it was Trace McSorley got the start against the Buccaneers on Christmas, we joked with this. We remember where sons we're like nobody. There's literally nobody except for Trace McSorley's family and maybe some Penn State people who want to see Trace McSorley starting.
Right. Unless you are a and even if you're let's be honest, if Jess has a couple of kids that are in college or out of college,
or kids in college,
old enough to be out of college, I guess is the best way to put it. If one of Jess's kids was suited up on Sunday, I'm Jess's friend, but I'd still be like, Jess, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch your boy get beat up because he's playing behind a bad offensive line, throwing to mediocre or less than receivers. That's just not something I want for him. It's super cool that he's on national TV.
Right.
But that's about the end of the super cool part of it.
So if we were to, I'm going to set it at so initially, this is before that those new wrinkles were about. I think Blake, our friend Blake, who's also one of the contributors for Revenge of the Birds, kind of set the over-under for primetime games at 2.5. Let me put it at 1.5. If we're saying 1.5 is the line for primetime games, are the Cardinals going to be over or under that number?
So I think we have to put one qualifier in here. We're predicting what they get to open the season. once the flexing comes into
Yeah,
play,
yeah.
that changes things. So we are not
We're talking
we're not
initial schedule.
yeah, I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna say they end up with a singular primetime game.
I would agree. That's kind of, I don't think they'll get completely shut out. And I actually wrote about this. I wrote about this on Cards Wire on Tuesday afternoon, that it may, for me, the division games are always some sort of intrigue, but if you're going to pick an NFC West game to show like on Thursday night, Cardinals Rams, that doesn't seem that pretty this year. Cardinals Seahawks is interesting, but the NFC West game that makes the most sense to put on national TV is 49ers Seahawks. Both teams were in the playoff last year. San Francisco's expected to be good this year. We'll see what happens with that. So you could see an NFC West game, but other than that, if you're looking at the schedule, I absolutely expect no primetime games at all in the first half of the season, because they don't want to put a primetime game on without knowing that Kyler Murray is going to be back from his knee injury. So I basically say scratch out the first half of the season, because even though we expect him probably back within the first month-ish, I don't think the league wants to risk that. So if no one wants to watch the Cardinals anyway, and fewer people want to watch the Cardinals without Kyler Murray playing, and so let's push any possibilities to the second half of the season. The one game, to me, that has some intrigue would be the Eagles game on the road, because of Jonathan Gannon's return to Philadelphia. Sort of the national stories about how he, kind of tanked, like how he failed at the Super Bowl and things like that. And then, of course, you've got the Jalen Hurts versus Kyler Murray Oklahoma connection. That would be kind of cool. I wouldn't be surprised about that. So yeah, I would kind of say that that's a likelihood. If you're looking at other possibilities, I mean, anything in the NFC East kind of is intriguing. Cardinals Browns, Cardinals Steelers, but I don't know. I think one is about what we can expect to get. Honestly, Cardinals Cowboys, but it's in Arizona instead of in Dallas, which makes it a little less intriguing, because you get Kyler Murray going to Dallas, where he's never lost, would be always some similar intrigue.
Yeah, which would be much. I'm with you. I think that it ends up being the Philly game on the initial schedule, deep in the season, like week 12 plus. So that way, when you look at it and you go, okay, look, you've got, if Kyler's out for the beginning of the season, you've got 6, 7, 8 games, for him to get back, and then you can see what they have, and then put it on a Thursday night, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah, that game makes the most sense on a Thursday night. I when we go to I think it'll be fairly deep. I don't think it'll be too deep into the season, because then you start getting playoff implications and things like that. So,
see, I think they're gonna wait and put it towards the back, because the thought process is it's a gimme for Philly if Arizona's bad, and if Arizona's good, obviously everybody predicting that Philly's going to be good again.
Yeah.
And if Arizona is competing, then it's an intriguing, where does Arizona kind of rank in this playoff chase thing against the best team in the NFC, so to speak.
Absolutely. And push it late in the season, you could get the cold of Philly as well, which that's less than ideal.
Yeah.
Coming up next on the Rise Up C-Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. Let's talk a little bit about, if we had to pick which games the Cardinals played before Kyler Murray's return, what would they be? That's coming up next on Rise Up C-Red. We're back on the Rise Up C-Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. the Cardinals are going to likely be without Kyler Murray for the first few games of the season. And so if we're kind of looking at the start of the season, last year when we were looking at the schedule with DeAndre Hopkins looking to be suspended for the first 6 games, we were hoping for some more winnable games early without him. I think I'm taking the opposite approach this year because no Kyler means probably terrible. So if they're going to lose anyway, I would prefer if the front end of the schedule were loaded up with games that the Cardinals probably don't win even with Kyler. That's my thing. The Eagles game, even though I think that'll be a good primetime matchup, I think the Eagles game would qualify as one of those games. If I'm looking at the opponents, if we're looking at 4 games that I would like the Cardinals to get out of the way before Kyler's return, probably the road 49ers matchup. I would say their game against the Bengals, and probably the Eagles. After that, I think the rest of those teams are, and even maybe the Cowboys to some extent, because the Cowboys could be good. But if I had to pick 3 games that please load them up at the beginning of the year, would be Bengals, 49ers on the road, and Eagles, even though I predict as we go into the schedule that the Eagles is going to be a late game this year.
I am of the opinion I want all of those East Coast road games early. Obviously, Philly would be ideal, but I don't think people realize that, and I know Chicago's technically not East Coast, but they got Philly, at Washington, at Pittsburgh, at Cleveland, and at Chicago. You want those in October or earlier. Like after October, all of that stuff is just a complete, at best, toss up weather wise. And so if you can potentially get those early in the season, especially with a guy coming off ACL, it's definitely not something you want to see. You don't want to see Chicago in November, right? So
yeah, that makes sense.
I'm with you in the sense of like competitiveness, but I want to get those kind of outdoor road games off the slate as early as possible, so that way I can breathe easier when Kyler's back and not having to worry about if he's gonna,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if I could load, let's see. So at Steelers, yeah, that's one. Washington, Bears, Eagles, Browns. Yeah, those are. Last year, what did they have? Didn't they have like 2, 1 p.m. Eastern starts? We're gonna have a few of those this year.
I hope, and again, that's my other thing is like, I hope those get in and out fairly quickly, because I hate East Coast games. So
yeah, that's no fun. All right, let's that was the short segment. That's fine. Coming up next on the Rise Up C-Red podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk the Web. Let's make our stupid schedule predictions. Hey, it's a podcast. We if you listen to it later, you can mock us, but we're going to make our predictions. We're going to predict the Cardinals schedule. That's coming next on Rise Up C-Red. They're back on the Rise Up C-Red podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. We're going to do our best to kind of predict how the schedule might play out, and that's using some knowledge we have over the last decade about how the NFL builds schedules and a couple of things. So I can tell you with the certainty that week 17 the Cardinals will be on the road, because that used to be the end of the year. That the Cardinals will never be at home that week, because that is the weekend before the Fiesta Bowl, and that is played at State Farm Stadium. And so every year they are the NFL, that's kind of one of the agreements, that the Cardinals do not play on that weekend at home so they can get the stadium ready for the festival. So we can almost always guarantee that they will be on the road in Week 17. And in last year, because of Week 18, they got to close the season at home, something that we don't normally see. And I think that will be probably the trend again. I think because the Cardinals are not expected to be good, we will see them have an early bye this year because they're not going to be, you just get it out of the way, and it won't be, there won't be a significant thing, so there's no reason to have them be rested late in the year to kind of gear up for the playoffs. So you just get their bye out of the way early, and I think it will be either quite early or quite late.
Yeah, and I went semi early with the bye, like first half of the season, because my expectation is that I think what the NFL's thinking is that they're going to get Kyler back in October. So they'll give him a couple games, then give him a bye, and then they'll finish out the season as healthy as can be.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to go about it. We also know that the league typically will try, generally speaking, to alternate home and road. So you will see a couple of stretches of the season. There's usually 2 stretches where you'll have 3 out of the 4 games at home, and another situation where you have 3 out of 4 on the road. And so that's kind of how we go. Now, if we look at the last couple of seasons, like they start the year against the other conference. So they started with Tennessee 2 years ago. They started with Kansas City last year. We've seen them start against the Chargers, and so I'm looking at, and that's kind of how I started. So I pick Week 1 that they're and the Cardinals weren't good last year and aren't good this year. That's what's expected. I don't anticipate them being home. I expect they will begin the season on the road this year. I have them starting Week 1 in Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers.
Yeah, I have them starting on the road as well, but I think it's going to be a huge matchup for the number 1 pick in the draft against the LA Rams.
Ooh. Week 2, we both have them at home. That'll be their home opener. And we actually have them playing the Falcons early on. That's an interesting thing that we both had them going that direction. If we look at the schedule last couple of seasons, how they tend to do division games, they tend to spread them throughout, but also kind of close against division teams, usually the final 2 or 2 of the final 3. Last year, the Cardinals played the Seahawks twice in 4 weeks, and so it'll be kind of I think it's kind of fun that we both have them opening against the Falcons. That would be interesting because the Falcons look improved, except kind of the quarterback. Like there's nothing great about the quarterback position there, but that's a winnable game even if you've got Colt McCoy starting.
Yeah, and I think, getting the Falcons early in the season while they're still kind of working in some of the rookies, Bijan Robinson and things like that, it would be ideal. The only thing I could think is you could see that game late again because they, like you talked about, like sometimes when they're like, oh, these teams are both going to be bad, they'll be like, hey, let's shove this stinker at the end of the season, and
wait, kind of like last season.
And it's like
they had their road game.
It's like, if 2 bad teams play, does anybody actually see it happen? So
they can bury it. It's like if you look at the TV coverage maps, you look at it and you're like, oh, this game gets minimal coverage. This is just singular regional coverage, only in the Arizona market and only the Atlanta market. Yeah. Week 2 we have them at home. Their home opener against the Falcons. That'll be interesting if we get that. Week 3, we both have them on the road, but I have them in Seattle. Their first divisional game will be against Seattle, and you have them on the road against Washington.
Yeah, go out there. That's what I said. I'm hoping, maybe I'm trying to will it into existence that they get a couple of these bad road games out of the way before November hits.
And week 4, I have them back at home against the Bengals, and you have them going against the Bears on the road.
So I will say this, and I'm not. I think you could be right, but I also wonder if because it is Joe Burrow, if they would want to push that game later in the season
Yeah,
and
I could see that.
well, and to get him indoors in November, December type thing, right?
That's true.
Like, oh, let's get this high flying offense indoors in December late, and then we can throw another home game, or because they play in the AFC North, a road game against Pitt, Baltimore, or Cleveland, one of those outdoor, and we can get those earlier in the season. But I like your thought process.
Well,
And
partially
then
that there was also wishful thinking is getting one of those likely
losses, yeah, I
like
get you.
losses. Get it out of the way for when Kyler's not playing.
Right. And so, and I have them at Chicago. So you talked about it like 3 games on the road in 4.
That
I've
you've got
actually,
3 out of 4 on the road. I've had them alternating in the first
yeah,
3.
and I've got that early, and that's something that I didn't we see that last year for them.
Um, yes, I think so.
And I think they like getting teams into Arizona like in the better weather. So I'm just double checking real quick.
Yeah.
So no, they pretty much alternated last year. You were right. They didn't. They're only 3 out of 4 was at Denver, home against Tampa, and then at Atlanta, at San Francisco.
Yeah, it was they closed the season 3 out of 4 away because they had 3 out of 4 at
In the
home,
middle of the
right
season,
in the middle, right around their
yeah.
bye.
Which was like looking back, that was like a beautiful potential schedule that obviously everything was going wrong at that point.
Yes,
But
it was. Season.
because think about this, like they came out of Minnesota where they played really well, and then it was Seattle at home, at LA, and then San Francisco and LA Chargers at home. And so it was like all kind of ideal, right? Like all of that was, it just didn't work out.
I have the Cardinals going on their bye in week 5, and look at it this way. This sets up the Cardinals for a potential return of Kyler Murray in week 6. Maybe. I get that. It lines up as I think that the Cardinals will have an early bye or a late bye. You kind of go with different. So I have them take their bye in week 5. You have them with their second division game of the year at home against the 49ers.
Yeah, so they tend to either, like you said, they tend to like group those divisional games. And so like you look last year, they had LA week 3 and then Seattle week 6, and then they had Seattle, LA, San Francisco 9, 10, and 11. So like I was thinking that potentially, having 2 divisional games in the first 5, and then you'll see shortly, but some more after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and again, one of those games that if that's the last, week without Kyler, wouldn't you want to get one of the San Francisco games off the docket there?
I would.
Preferably away, but they tend to get San Francisco away late in the year, right?
They can. It doesn't really matter for either place because the weather's pretty all right. So after the bye, I actually have the Cardinals with their second division game out of their first 5, and I have them basically. You and I flip-flop week 1 and week 6. You had the Cardinals on the road against the Rams in week 1, and I had them at the Steelers. I have them at L.A. You have them at Pittsburgh in week 6.
Yeah, and again, I'm just trying to wish those East Coast games into existence
early. Week 7, I have them on the road against the Commanders, and you have them at home against the Seahawks. So through 7 weeks leading into your bye week, you have them facing each of the division teams once.
Yeah, and you look last year, they only had 2 through 7 weeks, but then again, they had 3 or they had 5 through 11 weeks. So,
right.
Like that's the hard thing with the divisional games, isn't it? Is that they kind of like, they just kind of.
It's interesting because I know they have to, one of the things that the computers have to figure out and factor in are venues and things they have scheduled. So okay, they have concert schedules on certain things. That's
to be fair, Justin, I don't have that access. Or, well, not just access, but time.
I don't look that far ahead. Let's be, especially since the schedule's coming out in 2 days. I haven't researched the venue schedule for each of the NFL stadiums. I'm
just going to guess that most of those East Coast games, they're not going to have a ton of outdoor stuff.
Yeah,
in November and December.
That's very possible. Week 8, you have the bye. You have them on the bye right in the middle of the season.
Yeah, I have the bye, and I was thinking their thought process being, if Kyler's out, the first 2 months, which I don't think he will be, but if he's out the first 2 months, that would give you basically 10 games with him.
Yeah.
Post bye. And so
honestly, I think that's a good theory. So both of us, one of us I've got them, okay, he's going to miss the first month, and so you give him an extra week, and you have the worst case scenario where he misses the first half of the season, and so he gears up and he misses 2 months, and then there's a bye. So you get the bye out of the way before he's ready to play. So yeah, I think those are both good possibilities. And if he comes back early than that, it also gives his knee a week off, which I don't know how much they're figuring about that. I don't know how much they're trying to factor in Kyler Murray's knee for the schedule. I don't know. I don't know how much they even consider Arizona's needs this season, considering what they're expected to be. I have them against the Ravens, which, the at home, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, that'd be a fun matchup if he's back by week 8, which would be ideal. So by week 8, we both have them already in their buys, and so the rest of the way there's games for it. All right, week 9 after the Seth's bye, I have the Cardinals in week 9 at home against the Cowboys. You have them on the road against Cleveland. And if you're looking at your stretch, this is the part where you're seeing the Cardinals in your stretch. They have a 3 games on the road and 4 matchups, and then they get the reverse and get 3 games
at home,
at Cleveland in what would
that be late
beginning of November?
Late October, early November. That would be ideal. Is probably not the right word, but I think that would be that would probably be the worst case scenario. Yours is definitely the worst case scenario for Cleveland, just because and again, we'll get to that, but I just don't. I've got one of those games. I tried to think about it from logistics of okay, a dome team, we don't want them playing too many cold weather East Coast games, but again, I wanted to get your opinion on this. If they think that they're going to be bad, do you think that they care?
I don't. I don't.
I know honestly,
I know that NFL teams will kind of give. They will submit some wish list. And I know, a few years ago when Bruce Arians was here, they wanted their East Coast trips on consecutive weeks and didn't return home. They did one road game on the East Coast and then stayed at the Greenbrier or the whatever Briar in West Virginia, and then went to the other one. That was only 1 year, but I know sometimes they try to mitigate some things or say, hey, we want this game here. That they kind of put in a wish list to kind of factor in for the computer generated schedules that they do before they choose one.
Yeah, and so my concern is that the NFL is going to be well, their requests kind of go towards the bottom because they're going to be bad.
Honestly, I think they might try to factor in the star power of Kyler Murray, but ultimately, I think they're going to look at the Cardinals we don't care because you're going to be bad.
and I'm honestly with you. I'm genuinely worried about it, and so I'm just trying to project something that I would prefer.
Week 10, I have them on the road against the Bears, and you have them on the road at Seattle. Wrapping up once again, like last year, they play Seattle twice in 4 weeks. they do it again.
Yeah, and I was curious, because if you look last year, it was kind of weird. They had that stretch of three, divisional games, but from week 9 to 11. But then after week 11, they didn't play another divisional game until the final game of the season.
Yeah.
That was kind of crazy.
That
wasn't
was
it?
weird to me because that was out of character for the league, which normally, I'm used to seeing the Cardinals play 2 divisional games in like either consecutively to end the season or 2 out of the last 3.
And that's kind of what we both did it, but like you kind of even have it a little more coming up, and then and then we both, ironically, have the New York Football Giants coming to Arizona in week 11.
Yeah, week 11, which isn't week 11. If we had to, let me look that up. So let's look at, because we got September, so that'll be week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11 would be the weekend before Thanksgiving. Okay, that's kind of an okay spot, I guess.
Right. And so you look at it like it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, and so, and again, I think, and I could be wrong. I'm typically am, but I think the NFL wants to get these. They want to get these cold weather teams into Arizona in that back half, because again, this is just off of 1 year, obviously, but they brought in the Patriots, and then the Buccaneers came back, and obviously Tampa's not bad that time of year, but they both came back in December.
Yep.
Of last year, so
we both have them on the road in week 12. I think the Eagles game could be a Thursday night game in week 12. Then that'll be late enough in the season. Oh, that actually would be a Thanksgiving night game. I don't know if that's a smart one. I didn't look. I was just kind of building the schedule. Like that would be a Thanksgiving night game. Interesting. That's an interesting thought there, but it makes sense. Late enough in the season where Kyler'd be back. The Eagles are a big draw for television. You've got Jonathan Gannon, head coach. It would be his return to Philly. I think that's an intriguing matchup. But hey, maybe it's the Black Friday game. I doubt that. But
it wouldn't be the worst thing. But yeah, so you look at it like you said, week. You said that's 12.
Yes. So that would be Thanksgiving weekend. You have them at Houston.
Yeah, and I think that they're going to be in Houston because nobody cares.
That's true. Week 13, back at home, I've got them facing the 49ers for the first time in the season. You have them at home against Cincinnati as we hit the beginning of December. Week 14, I have them in Houston. You have them at home against the Cowboys. And then moving into week 15, they close out their Seahawks matchup with me at home. And you have them playing Thursday night against the Eagles on the road. So we both kind of had the same idea. If there's going to be a primetime game, that it would be against the Eagles on a Thursday night. We'll see if that plays out.
Yeah, and you look at it, that would be the 21st. So it would be that Christmassy weekend. And so coming off
that would be the week before if you're looking. So it'd be the
the week
15th. 14th, I think would be
14th. Okay, yeah. So, the 14th. Sorry. So yeah, so like it would be that area, and I think that makes sense. And then, over Christmas.
Ooh, that you have a potential. So a Christmas Eve game or a Christmas Day game.
Right. If they're good, because here's the other thing I think we forgot to mention. Didn't they say that they're flexing Monday night games this year?
I think it's possible. I think that's really hard to do. Like that's the part of, like, when they say they could flex Monday night games, I'm like, do you you have to do that early because travel plans, people. It's one thing to flex a Sunday game to the evening because people normally have late flights anyway or fly out early the next morning, but that's a nightmare for
So
travelers.
it's NFL's discretion in weeks 13. I just looked it up on the NFL website. So that could be, if again you look at it, if the Cardinals are good, you get Lamar Jackson in a dome in December, and you get the Cardinals being good. And if they're not, then it's just on the 24th, and the Cardinals are a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, Christmas weekend, you have them at home against the Ravens, and I have them on the road against the Browns. That's going to be an interesting one because they're going to spread that schedule around. That's the part because the college football season's over.
Yeah,
so we will see Saturday games, Sunday games, Monday games, and they might have because they will probably minimize the Sunday games and try to get kind of 2 early games, probably 4 games on Saturday, 4 games on, and then a couple on Monday. On
you
Christmas
think
Day.
they'll still have a Sunday night game though, don't you think?
Yes, I think for sure they will because money.
So let me ask you about the next week, because that is New Year's Eve.
Yes.
So are we assuming that because that's typically big bowl game time?
They might have a lot of Saturday games that week.
I was going to say, do you think that they're going to go heavy Saturday that week?
Probably.
Okay. And we both have them
and on the road. That's the weekend they will be on the road no matter what, because that is
the
Fiesta
Bowl.
Yes.
So that'll be, we both have them going to Santa Clara to take on the 49ers in San Francisco. I'm really interested to see how they come up with this because, like I said, like we're saying, so like Sunday is December 31st.
Yeah.
And those typically December 31st is when they do the college football playoff semifinals. So the NFL and college football are either going to have to agree to do it the 30th, which is the Saturday, which logistically makes more sense.
Yeah. So maybe Sunday night football will be Saturday night football that week.
Yeah. But they have so many of their New Year's 6 bowls on Monday. So will the NFL even compete that week with the Monday night football game? Because that's week 17. So that's in the flex scheduling time too. Weird. Like this is just a weird calendar.
This is a weird calendar. We don't normally run across this, but I mean that won't affect the Cardinals. They'll probably play Saturday afternoon, I would guess.
Right. And then we both have them ending at home.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this didn't happen last year. So we're going back to like 21-20 and more of like what that was like than last year, where they only faced one divisional team the final 7 weeks of the season. That was really baffling.
It was really odd to see. We normally didn't see that, and who knows, but there we have it. We have our schedule prediction. Let's see if we actually hit on anything, because that's 17 games we're just trying to play around with. So we have our schedule. So
they're not. We already know international games, or no?
Those will be announced.
Those
Wednesday.
Are tomorrow.
Yes, they're being announced
tomorrow.
Wednesday. Although some of them have already been leaked, because the Cardinals aren't involved, I don't care.
The Chiefs. Well, that's what I was going to say. So we know that the Cardinals won't be going international this year?
I'm pretty sure they will not.
Just because
I don't think they face any of the home international teams this year.
Okay. I was just curious because I honestly didn't look, and
I'm pretty sure I wrote about it.
Outside of Jacksonville, teams typically don't go back-to-back years international, if I remember right, too, right?
So Cardinals will not play an international. I wrote this back in how long ago?
Oh, yeah, here they are. Buffalo, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Kansas City.
And they don't face any of those teams. At
yeah.
all.
So no international games. Yeah, and I was pretty sure that they outside of Jacksonville, because again, Jacksonville kind of jumped on being one of the teams. that goes international quite often. Most teams don't go in back-to-back years.
Yeah. It's because, Jaguars, that might change because attendance was bad. And so they're like, we will take that team and we'll fill their stadium in London.
Right, exactly.
so that wraps up this edition of the show, of the Rise of C-Red podcast. We've made our schedule predictions. Make sure you listen to the show, download it, compare it, and then when the schedule comes out on Thursday, go ahead and hit us up on Twitter and mock us for our predictions. Or maybe we are geniuses.
Yeah, if we get, to be fair, if we get one right, we're geniuses.
I think so. Like it would be amazing if we hit on any of these. But yeah, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. This Rise Up C-Red podcast. We will have our scheduled reaction show later this week. That's on our next show. Thanks for listening as always.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up Red Sea, be Red Sea Red, and of course, Rise up Sea Red.
Rise!